Well, happy Thanksgiving weekend. Wow. Did everybody eat too much like I did? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it was good too. I mean, do you know that this holiday is the most traveled one, the most family kind of where all get together? I hope you had a great one. Maybe you're here because like we had my mom's 87 years old. She drove over from West Virginia to have Thanksgiving. It was great. She drove herself back on Friday morning, got home safe, which was really great. But just, you may have traveled to visit. So if you're here and you're like, okay, this table thing, that's a little different. They told me about it, but it feels different now that I'm sitting here. Just to give you a little heads up, tables are they help us live out the mission of Blue Ridge, which is just becoming followers of Jesus and helping other people become followers of Jesus. We call those disciples. And so that's kind of what we do. And so if you're here and you're like looking around, but it looks like most of the tables are pretty full. But if not, what we've learned about tables is they work well when they have like 4 to 6 people at a table. That way everybody gets to talk and there's enough people to talk. So at this point in the service, we just try to kind of balance that out a little bit. So here's what we ask everybody to do. Ask everybody to look around right now. Just look around. You see a couple people sitting alone or whatever, and your table's like really packed. Either send somebody to go to their table or, ask them to join yours. So let's all stand up. Let's look around. Let's say hello to somebody. Say happy Thanksgiving or whatever like that. And go join some other people if you can. Morning. All right, that's good. Okay, so everybody, I don't know if your family's like this, but I think that most times, there's different holidays about certain things, but Thanksgiving is about that feast, right? And what happens is, a lot of families, they have these special dishes, right, that people look forward to. Like at our house, it would not be Thanksgiving unless we had this broccoli, Velveeta cheese, Ritz cracker kind of combination. It just wouldn't be, everybody looks forward to that, right? So it may be grandma's stuffing, it may be some special pumpkin pie. I don't know what it is you like, but there's something that everybody looks forward to. So it's interesting, as I was reading an article on Thanksgiving, or maybe the day after in Outside Magazine, they gave a list of the top 10 things that people dislike, right? There's certain things you like, but certain things you're like, I'll pass on that. So here's what we're gonna do. We had a little fun this morning. I'm gonna give you 60 seconds. Somebody take a card out, write the numbers 1 through 5 on them, right? I'm gonna give you 60 seconds as a table to come up with the top 5 disliked foods at Thanksgiving, all right? I'll give you 60 seconds, ready? You guys ready? All right, here goes. 1, 2, 3, go. All right, time's up. Put your pencils down. Time's up. All right, let's see how well you did. Ready? All right. So they surveyed 1,000 people, 1,000 adults, and this is what they came in. Number one thing, let's see if you got it. Number one thing, cranberry sauce. Yeah, right? They're looking over it no, 30%, over 30% say, no, pass on that, right? Number 2, turkey, right? Somebody said, right? Number 2, turkey, 29. That seems like un-Thanksgiving-ish. I don't know, but it just seems like it, right? All right, number 3, green bean casserole. All right, green bean casserole. Now, some green bean casseroles are good, some are not, all right? It all depends who makes it, all right? Number 4, ham. There's something wrong with those people. I just think something wrong with those people. Who can't like a good ham, all right? right? You can get that at Christmas, you can get that at Easter, ham. Like, I don't get that. But anyways, number 5, coleslaw. Like, who even makes coleslaw for that? I don't even know, right? Yeah, that is a hard pass. So how many that's 25%, 1 out of 4. How many people got all 5? 4? We got a 4 table over here. Couple 4s. 3? Yeah, 2? Everybody got at least cranberry sauce. 1, right? Exactly. All right, so it's interesting. So there are things, and we don't just do this with food, we do it with other things in our life, right? We do it with activities the same way. There's certain things that we're like, yes. I have a friend of mine, I like adventure stuff. He called me up like a couple winters ago and said, hey, going snowmobiling in Wyoming. I'm like, sign me up, I'm there. I don't care the cost, I'll be there, right? But that same friend would like say, hey, let's go rock climbing. I'm like, hard pass. Nope, ain't doing that, right? Not like, I thought I would like that because I like rappelling, but getting on the side of a mountain, no, that's a hard pass for me. My wife, anything to do with football, right? Yes, hard, yes, I'm there, right? Because she had a really bad Thanksgiving because she's a Commanders fan. So if you know what happened, you know what happened, all right? But you ask her like to watch a movie that'll make her sad and cry, no way. It's a hard pass. And if it has to do with kids, double hard pass. She is not doing it. You're not going to get it, right? We all have those things in our life. So what we're going to be talking about is these activities, these things that we say yes and we say no to. That's what we're going to look at today. And we're in a series at Blue Ridge called Wonder. As we come into the Christmas season, the wonder, like I talked to my friend the other day, and his favorite movie is what? It's a Wonderful Life, right? It's a Christmas, this wonder of Christmas, kind of those two go together. So what we thought we would do, though, is maybe take a different look at it. Like wonder, it does mean awe, struck, and everything like that, but there's other meanings for wonder. And so what we decided to do is take a journey and look at the people that were part of this story of Jesus. Basically his family tree, the main trunk of his family tree, right? People that are listed in the Bible and look at their lives and how it connected with wonder and this Savior that was coming, right? So that's what we looked at. And last week, Andrew kicked it off with this idea that wonder sometimes can be, I wonder how I got here. I wonder how God's gonna use this situation in my life for anything good, all right? And there's this wonder inside of us that's almost like hopelessness. And maybe that's where you are right now. Maybe you showed up and you're like, I don't know. I wonder how God's gonna use any of this in my life right now. And so if that was you, we looked at a character named Jacob, or he looked at a character named Jacob, and how, as we pull back the lens, that thing that he didn't understand, God was writing a bigger story. And hopefully, if you didn't get a chance to be here and hear it, that can give you some hope. So go to blueridge.org and just listen to it. Hopefully it'll be encouraging. But today, we're gonna take another take on wonder, right? We're gonna look at that wonder where we're kind of confused. So let me pray, and then we're gonna get into this. God, some of us are in that place of confusion right now, wondering where you are, wondering what we believe about you, wondering how we can ever connect with you on a deep level, how you can ever fix what's broken in our lives, wondering if what we've been taught about you is true, wondering if the songs that we sing can mean really what they mean. There's so much wonder that we're at, but it's more of a confused wonder sometimes. And so, God, wherever we're at Bedford, on that campus, or this campus, or watching online, you know what we're thinking. And you want to meet us in that moment right now. And so I pray that over the next 40 minutes or so, we would encounter you. We would encounter you speaking to us, the God that reveals himself, and that we would walk away in wonder of what you told us today. And we pray it in your name, Jesus. Amen. So our roadmap that we've used is found in the first chapter of the New Testament, chapter of Matthew. And it's a genealogy of Jesus. And most of us read through that thing and we'd like, okay, next. Like we start in chapter 2 because we're not even sure really what to do with some of this stuff. It says this: Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob, who we looked at last time. Jacob was the father of Judah and his brothers. Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron was the father of Ram. Ram was the father of Amminadab. Yeah, that sounds like Amminadab. Okay, let's go with that. Was the father of Nahshon. Nahshon was the father of Salmon. Salmon was the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. You look at this, you're like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, that's interesting, and there's a lot of names that are kind of hard to pronounce. But I was reading through that probably a couple months ago, and I was kind of, and then what left me confused was that last name, Rahab. Like, what is she doing there, God? Like, if you know the story of Rahab, you're like, why is she there? And maybe you're like, I don't even know any of those names. And I don't know Rahab, right? Well, Rahab is actually of all those names, after you get about the first 4 or 5, you don't find any of them in the Bible there much anymore, especially in the New Testament, except Rahab. And Rahab gets mentioned in the New Testament. But look what it says about Rahab. By faith, Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who were disobedient. And then James, in the same way, not even Rahab the prostitute considered righteous for what she did. See, it puts this label on her. Like, wow, like I didn't know that, like Rahab the prostitute, is that what we know about her? Well, how does that get in there? I mean, yeah, I love the fact that the Bible is like transparent and it says we're gonna talk about all that stuff, but like, why is she there? Like if most of us were going to think through, like if we didn't know this list and we were trying to look at the characters of the Bible, I don't know that we'd have put a Rahab the prostitute in the line of Jesus, right? How'd that happen? Well, hopefully today, we're gonna look at her story and we're gonna kind of see maybe why she's in that story, or how she got into this story that God was writing. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick up the story in Joshua chapter 2, right? At your tables, you're gonna say Joshua chapter 2, right? And you can be flipping there, but let me give you a little of the backstory of Joshua chapter 2. So Jacob, right? There was a famine in Israel. So Abraham was given this promised land of Israel, his sons. Jacob, there's a famine. He ends up migrating to Egypt where there's food. And for the next 400 years, the Israelites are trapped in Egypt. And they end up becoming slaves until Moses, you guys have heard of that. Moses, this guy, deliverer that God raises up, he gets them through these miraculous acts. They leave there, the Red Sea parts, they're heading to this promised land. Along the way, God gives them the 10 Commandments, it's just amazing stuff. They get right to the border of this land, this promised land that God had given to Abraham, and he sends some people in to check it out, and they get freaked out. They get freaked out because who's there, and these giants, and they just don't think God's big enough. Even after all he's done, they don't think he's big enough. And their disobedience means that generation wanders in the desert for 40 years until they die. Moses dies. And this guy named Joshua kind of takes over, and we're back to the border of this promised land of Abraham, and they're getting ready to go in, but it's gonna be a fight. They're gonna have to take it because there's inhabitants. But God promised them, and he said, I'll be with you. And he tells Joshua, the first thing he tells him, I'll be with you. Like, do this thing. And the first thing they gotta go, the first major thing they're hit is this place called Jericho, this huge walled city that's right there. And so that's where Joshua 2 opens up, and that's where you meet Rahab. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to have somebody at your table read chapter 2, verses 1 through 21. It's a lot of verses, but you'll get it. It's a narrative. And ask these 3 questions. What do we learn about Rahab? That's just kind of facts about her. 2, what do we think she believes about God? And 3, how do her actions line up with her beliefs? Simple things. Who is she? What does she think about God? And how do her actions line up with that, all right? So I'm gonna give you about 7 minutes. Have somebody read it. There's a Bible on the table. Google it if you don't know a Bible app. But give me 7 minutes. 1, 2, 3, go. All right. All right. So what did we learn about Rahab? I mean, first thing we learned is what? They're right. She's a prostitute, right? Yep. That's kind of the first thing. And because these spies, these two spies, they end up going to her house, right? And so she's there, but everybody knew everybody, and they see it. So what happens next? They send people to go, right? Get those spies, right? So the king sends some soldiers or whatever. Hey, we know you got the spies, bring them out. So what's the next thing we learned about Rahab? She's a pretty good liar, right? She's pretty fast and loose with the truth, right? So she's got, no, yeah, they were here, they're not here now, I'm not sure where they went, whatever. But really, what has she done? She's smart because she's proactive. She hid them. Where'd she hide them? On the roof, right? Under some baskets, right? So she finally gets them to leave. She goes up onto the roof and she has this conversation with them, basically kind of about what's going on and, you know, what's happening in the people around her. But I love it because she seems like a woman that has agency. She's a strong woman. She actually uses this opportunity to kind of negotiate with them a little bit, right? Kind of set up this thing like, hey, like, I'll do this for you, but this is kind of what I'm kind of wanting in return, right? And they agree to it, right? So she kind of bargains with them. And then though, she actually plans their escape, lets them out, and they go off, right? They leave, right? She tells them even what to do, how long to stay away, and where they're gonna be searching, and where to hide, and all this kind of stuff, right? So to me, I get Rahab was a woman that was willing to, even when she negotiates, she cared about her family. Like, she didn't just negotiate for her, she negotiated for the people around her, right? The people she cared about, right? This tells me a little bit about who she was. But those are just the facts about who she was, all right? But what about, because when you look at her and you wonder, like, why she's there, all right? A lot of times what you and I do is we filter out. We just hear that first part, like she was a prostitute, right? And we're like, there's all these people in Jericho. Why'd you choose her, God? Right? We filter that out. And the only reason we'd filter out is because they're professional. It's the choices she made. But look what happens. What do we know what does she think about God? What does she think about God? It says, right? When she talks to him, she tells him, look at it says in verse 9. And she said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land. I know it, all right? And that the fear of you has fallen upon us, and all the inhabitants of the land melt away before you. For we heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you came out of Egypt, or when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites. These are people who kind of going to stand in their way, who were beyond the Jordan, to Shihon and Og. Those are the kings whom you devoted to destruction, who you kicked, basically. And as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted. And there was no spirit left in any man because of you, for the Lord your God, he is God in the heavens and above and on the earth below, right? She didn't say a God. Her belief is that this God is the God of the heaven and earth, right? She didn't know a lot, but she knows that. And she also believes this God is sovereign and he's already given them this land, right? That's what she said. We know that he's given you this. We get that, right? And there's no doubt. In fact, it's just not me that believes that. This is kind of the conclusion that we've drawn about your God. So she doesn't know a lot, but she knows that. She knows that there's a God and he's powerful and he's sovereign and he's given this land to them, right? But in that's why she negotiates with them, because she realized that her future she wants it to be aligning with this God, right? Which is interesting because a lot of times the reason we think people get part of the story of God is how much they know about God. Oh, you went to seminary. Oh, you do this. Or, oh, you know that. I don't know that much about God. I don't know that much. I haven't read all the Bible. I don't know that much, right? And so we self-filter ourselves out. And we say, well, God uses those people. God doesn't use me. Well, what did she know? She didn't know anything about their religion. She didn't know anything about the thing. She just knew there was this powerful God, right? That's all she needed to know, right? And then what's next is that she acts upon it. She acted upon that. She actually made a bargain with them against the people that, they're in this walled city. There are these band of Israelites that shouldn't be able to get into their walled city, right? It's huge. Walls you read about it, huge, thick, should be impenetrable. But she believes God is big enough to do this. And so she aligns herself not with the people that would make sense, but this God. In fact, she does this, she bores in, and how's it end up? It says this, and if you go on to Joshua 6, but Rahab the prostitute and her father's household and all who belonged to her, everybody, right? All the bargains she made, Joshua saved alive. And she's lived in Israel to this day because she hid the messengers from Joshua sent to spy on Jericho. And so I look at this and I go, okay, is that why, God? Is that why she's part of the story? Not because of her past. In fact, in spite of it, I'd say. Not because of how much she knew about God, but in spite of it. I mean, if you didn't know this, that she was in Jesus' lineage, right? And I ask you, hey, read the Bible and come up with the people that you think are most likely to be in the lineage of Jesus. None of us would put her in that list. We wouldn't. We'd put maybe a Moses or a Joshua. We wouldn't put her in that list. Why? Because we'd have filtered her out. The same way we filter ourselves out. The same way we think certain people God really uses and certain people he doesn't. Well, what if it isn't about how much you know about God? What if it isn't about your past? What if it isn't about your talents? Because I'm sure there were people that were more talented in that city. What if it come down to one simple thing? Your willingness to say yes, to take the next step. What if it's that? What if the only kind of limitation of us experiencing the wonder of God or being used by God really comes down to that one question? Am I willing to take the next step? Because when I look at her, that's what I see. I see a woman who took the next step of inviting them in, inviting these, spies. She knew who they were from, in. I see she took the next step of kind of positioning herself against the king and his people. She took the next step of hiding them, but also negotiating with them. She took the next step of being vulnerable about what she believed and what she knew about God. She took the next step of bringing all her family into the same story and saying, come with me, come hide. She took the next step of letting them go and putting that scarlet thing. Her whole reason, and I'd love to know the rest of the story. I wish the Bible had said, and this is what happened once she got to Israel. It doesn't tell us that. But I believe her character of being willing to take the next step is the reason she's in that story. And I believe what we need to take away, what I've needed to take away from this, is am I willing to take the next step? So the question really is, what is the next step? What is the next step for any of us? Because what it says, if you go to Hebrews, it says this, by faith, right? Not having all the answers. Faith means you don't really know how that step's gonna end up totally. You just trust. By faith, the people crossed the Red Sea as on dry land. But the Egyptians, when they attempted to do the same, were drowned. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they had been encircled for 7 days. That's just a really cool story. It happens in chapter 5, and it's just this seismic thing that God does. It's pretty cool. But it's, again, about trusting God. But by faith, Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who were disobedient because she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. She took the next step, which she had no idea that next step was gonna be, but that next step was what opened her up into the story that God was writing. So the question for us is, what's your next step? What is your next step? Maybe your next step has to do with somebody that was at Thanksgiving with you. Maybe it has to do with reconciling with them. Because every time you get around them, they push your buttons. Maybe there's some forgiveness there that God is saying, I want you to take the next step. I forgave you and I want you to forgive them. See, your next step is God says that when we forgive, right, we'll be forgiven. We'll experience this grace. Maybe that's your next step. Maybe your next step is inviting somebody into what's going on in your life. I was at a group with some guys this past week. And one of the guys in the group just kind of opened up and said, this is what's happening in my life. And it was not the cleanest, it was kind of messy, but he didn't try to cover over it. He just invited us in. And he invited us in to pray for him, invited us in to take advice, because he knew what the Bible says is that when we confess, when we invite people into that, there's healing on the other side. Maybe your next step is, I don't know, maybe it's around this idea of generosity. You see these things and God's asking you, hey, I've given you a lot. I want you to be generous. And you're thinking, I don't know if I do. God's saying, this is your next step. Maybe your next step has to do with he's inviting you to join him in serving in what he's doing. I think of my wife, Deb. So a couple years ago, she got invited to be part of what they were doing. There was this Agape Center in Monita, and there's this woman named Tabitha, and Tabitha had this vision that what's happening in Monita could happen in Lynchburg, and so she wanted to start that. And there was a few people that she brought around her. Deb was one of them, but some more people. And they started this thing. And they got a space over off Carroll Avenue. And it started to happen and happen. And Deb loved it. And I could see her coming more alive being a part of it. But what was interesting is that as she got more and more involved and it started to take off, about a year and a half ago, God threw a wrench into that. Because Tabitha said, hey, I think God's calling me in a different direction. And I've been praying, and Deb, I think you need to take over. If you know my wife, she loves to serve, but she loves to serve behind the scenes, right? She doesn't want to be out front. But I am so proud of her. I am so proud of the way she steps up, like scared stepped up, okay? Into this area of serving, right? Into the front seat of that being a director. Right? Into having to go to churches and speak, which terrifies her. Getting on podcasts and doing stuff like that. But I have watched the God move in her in such deep ways. I'm trying to follow like that same obedience to say yes to the next step. And she keeps saying yes to the next step. And God keeps doing, right now, we looked at some numbers. There's like 16,000 people under the poverty line in Lynchburg. They're serving over 4,000. Almost 1 out of every 4, they're serving, right? And it's continuing to grow and continuing to get more partnerships. But that's only because she was willing to take the next step, right? What's your next step? I don't know what it is, but I know that God has one for everyone. Maybe your next step is to move out of maybe this idea you had about God into knowing him deeper. And the next step is the encounter group. Or the next step is joining some other community where they can challenge you a little bit to grow in your faith. Is that your next step? Maybe your next step is to go to talk to somebody about what's going on, what you've kept hidden. Because you're afraid that if they knew this about me, what would that mean? See, I believe God has a wonder ahead of us, but I think it starts with us being willing to take the next step. So instead of me kind of telling you what the next step, because I don't know what the next step is for you, what if we let God speak that to us? Are we willing to listen? So here's what we're gonna do. The worship team's gonna sing a song over us. Spirit, lead me. And what I want you to do is I want you to take that time, and I just want you to be still before God. And ask that one prayer. What's my next step, God? What is my next step? And let's see what he says to you.
If you say it's wrong, then I'll say no. If you say release, I'm letting go. If you're in it with me, I'll begin. And when you say to jump, I'm diving in. If you say be still, then I will wait. If you say to trust, I will obey. I don't want to follow my own ways. I'm done chasing feelings. Spirit, lead me. Oh, Spirit, lead me. Felt like a burden, but once I could grasp it, you took me further than I was asking. And simply to see you, it's worth it all. My life is an altar. Let your fire fall. If you say it's wrong, then I'll say no. If you say release, I'm letting go. If you're in it with me, I'll begin. And when you say to jump, I'm diving in. If you say be still, then I will wait. If you say to trust, I will obey. Teach me how to follow in your way. I'm done chasing feelings. Spirit, lead me. Oh, Spirit. When all hope is gone and your word is all I've got, I have to believe you still bring water from the rock to satisfy my thirst, to love me at my worst. And even when I don't remember, you remind me of my worth. I don't trust my ways. I'm trading in my faults. I lay down everything, 'cause you're all that I want. I've landed on my knees. This is the cup you have for me. And even when it don't make sense, I'm gonna let your spirit lead. Spirit, if you're in it with me, I'll begin. And when you say to jump, I'm diving in. If you say be still, then I will wait. If you say to trust, I will obey. You're the only truth, the life, the way. I'm done chasing feelings. Spirit, lead me. Whoa. Spirit, lead me. Whoa. Spirit,
All right, so what do we do now? Well, here's what I've learned. That there is power in inviting other people into the journey. So here's what I'm gonna challenge you to do. If you know what your next step is, then I want you to share at your table. I want you to share at the table right now. Maybe you're saying my next step is to figure out what my next step is. I don't know. You don't have to. This is not a forced. You know, God never forces people to take the next step. He just invites them. But on the other side of that next step is wonder. Wonder how God would use me. Wonder of what God's gonna do. And so I'm gonna challenge you. We're gonna have a soft close here. Meaning like, I'm gonna pray over you, but then you can stay at your tables as long as you want. If you got kids, they're gonna tell you, you need to come pick them up. You can't just like leave them all morning. But let me pray for you. And then I want you to share at your table. Maybe just say, hey, this is mine. And pray for me or whatever. All right, let me pray. God, thank you. Thank you for not looking at what disqualifies us, but what qualifies each of us is the ability to say yes, is the ability to invite it into this journey of what you're doing, into this journey of wonder, to understand you, to think that you'd use us, all of that. So God, thank you for speaking. Thank you for Rahab. Thank you for including that. And let us all be like Rahab and be willing to take the next step. We pray in your name, Jesus. Amen.